If you own or you've been lusting after Hasselblad's handmade X2D medium format camera, then you'll probably know that their XCD lenses are really hard to come by, thanks to, I think, larger than expected demand and limited production numbers. But anyway, this kind of got me thinking, because one of the lenses I've been wanting for a while is the XCD 55mm lens. I thought to myself, can TTArtisan's M-mount 50mm 0.95 do justice to Hasselblad's 102 megapixel sensor? How does the image quality of this lens stack up against a genuine Hasselblad XCD lens, and does its incredibly low price compromise the results that you get from it? Well, that's what I'm going to share in this video. If you're new here, g'day, I'm Peter. I've been a photographer in Australia for about 40 years, shooting mostly landscapes and cars, and that's what I tend to talk about on this channel. Now, I've been using my X2D for, I think, about 7 months now, and I've used 3 native XCD lenses on it. I've used the 45p f4, the 80mm f1.9, and the 35-75 f3.5 to 4.5, which is the lens that I'm using now. All of them are extraordinary. In fact, I've read that Hasselblad considers the 35-75 the best lens that they've ever made. Maybe that's no longer true with the recent release of the 20-35E, but it's still pretty incredible. Now, that said, I've actually wanted the XCD 55mm lens since the beginning, but because of global stock shortages and my reluctance to wait forever for anything, I ended up purchasing the magnificent little Voigtlander VM mount 50mm f2.0 Apo lens. And I've been using that with the NovaFlex M to XCD adapter for a little while. I haven't used it a great deal, but you can tell straight off the bat that it's an extraordinarily sharp, beautiful lens. But another lens that I've owned and used quite a lot and really enjoyed was the TTArtisan 90mm f1.25 lens. And I didn't get rid of that until I was able to get my hands on a Hasselblad XCD 80mm f1.9 lens, and then I sold the TTArtisan 90. But I kind of wish I'd hung on to it, because it's just such a robust, solid, beautifully made lens. And now that I no longer have the 80 and have gone on and bought the 35-75, I reckon it would have been nice to keep the 90. Anyway, that TTArtisan 90mm f1.25 manual focus lens was so impressive that I kind of wondered if their M-mount 50mm f0.95 fully manual aspherical lens could deliver similar image quality to either the little Voigtlander f2.0 Apo lens that I own, or my do-it-all lens that I have now, the Hasselblad XCD 35-75. So I reached out to TTArtisan and asked if they'd mind sending one of those 50 0.95s over to me, and thankfully they did, but they haven't even seen this video before you have, so they've had no input into it. Now, before you use any of the currently available non-native lenses on the Hasselblad X2D, whether it's from TTArtisan, Voigtlander, Leica, Zeiss, or whatever, there are 3 things that you need to do with your X2D to make it work and to get the best user experience. Now, I've created another video that walks you through the whole process of setting up your X2D to run these fully manual lenses effectively on your X2D, including the adapters that you can use, all that sort of stuff. There's a link in the description below to that video, plus I'll put a link up here as well. So I recommend watching that video either before or after you watch this video. Now, as I explained in that video, it's important to understand that the Leica M-mount lenses, whether they're from Leica or Zeiss or TTArtisan or Voigtlander, they're designed to cover a full frame sensor, not a medium format sensor. So there is going to be some vignetting. And vignetting means you're going to need to crop your images a little bit. Now, there's 2 ways that I do that. I either shoot at an aspect ratio on my X2D that virtually eliminates the issue of vignetting, and that is either X-pan mode, which I love, or 1:1 mode. Either of those tends to ignore the corners, the extreme corners on the 6:4:5 sort of dimensions anyway, or the 4:3 dimensions anyway, so you don't get the vignetting in your images. And the second way that I do it is simply cropping in post in Photoshop. The good thing is, because this lens, the TTArtisan, and all the other manual focus lenses for the X2D are manual aperture lenses on the lens barrel, you'll actually see in real time the effect of the vignetting based on the aperture you set. So as you adjust your aperture, you can see the amount of vignetting, whether it's soft or it's hard. And so you get a real time view of what to expect in the final image. Now for the bit you're waiting for, image quality. how does this sub US $750 lens compare to Voigtlander's beautiful US $1,000 50mm Apo f2.0 lens and Hasselblad's Do-It-All XCD 35-75 $5,000 lens shot at 50mm? Well, let's look at 3 different scenes shot with all 3 lenses and see if you can spot the difference. Now, out of these 3 sets of images, were you able to pick which one was which? Well, in all 3 scenes, the Voigtlander was the first image, the TTArtisan 50-0.95 was the second image, and of course the Hasselblad XCD 35-75 was the third image. Now, for the final set of images, this time just using the TTArtisan 50-0.95, I took a photo of my son shot at f8, f5.6, f4, f2.8, f2, f1.4, f1.1 and f0.95. Now, as you can see with this sort of subject, softness starts to creep in as you get really wide with the aperture. And for some genres of photography, like portraiture, this might actually be the look that you're after. There's been something of a resurgence in vintage look these days when it comes to lenses used for portraiture and other genres, reintroducing some imperfections of older glass to create a bit of a sort of a nostalgic look. Everything is so perfect these days that it's ironic. These days we seem to crave imperfection. On the positive side, this lens is rather nice to look at and to hold. Now, to some people that doesn't matter, the look and feel of a lens, but to others it does, me included. I've always loved beautifully machined and finished mechanical devices, which is, why I enjoy watches. A lot of it has to do with just the precision with which they're made. Now, this titanium version has a lovely grey metallic sheen to it. It's titanium in name only. It's not actually a titanium lens. It's actually made from aviation, aluminium and brass. You can see a hint of the brass here on the back, which is rather lovely. The fit between the lens, the TTArtisan adapter and the X2D are also really solid. It produces delicious bokeh at 0.95 right up to around f2.8. And then after that, you start getting sun stars, which is quite lovely. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. And those sun stars are double sun stars. So To a purist, they might not be ideal, but I still think they look pretty good. Between f1.4 and f11, this lens produces fantastic results. I was genuinely impressed with it. So if you're happy to use this manual focus lens, either on full manual on your camera or aperture priority, I reckon it represents an economical, though less functional, alternative to Hasselblad's XCD 50mm f2.5 lens. Even if you just purchase it as an intermediate solution like I did with the TTArtisan 90 until you get the lens you really want. But you know, it's funny, since I bought the and used the XCD 81.9, I almost didn't sell the TTArtisan 90 because it was just so nice and the results I got out of it were so good. And in hindsight now, I wish I'd kept it. Maybe I'll get another one anyway. But this lens, like the 90, surprised me. On the negative side, I don't really like the screw-on lens cap. Yes, it's beautiful, and yes, it's certainly more secure than a traditional clip-on one, but I prefer the convenience of one that just either attaches with a clip or magnetically. Now, the second thing is, don't expect this lens to be sharp at 0.95 or f1.1. These apertures are perfect for creating that soft, dreamy, vintage look, but it's not going to be terribly sharp at those apertures. Sharpness kicks in by the time you get to about f1.4 and is properly sharp, really genuinely sharp at f2.0 and up. Another thing, the aperture clicks on the lens barrel are a bit too subtle for my liking. I'd prefer that they snap into f-stops or at least half stops, much more like the Voigtlander and the Leica lenses. Another thing, the knurling design on the focus and aperture rings aren't as grippy as the more traditional style on the silver and black versions of this lens. I'd certainly prefer the latter, but your preferences may vary. Another thing, this lens is heavy. Now, to some people that might be a plus. I enjoy heavy, solid, well-made items, but I mean, if you're traipsing around the countryside and carrying this lens with you, then maybe you would prefer something lighter. This thing weighs in at 690 grams. It's almost twice the weight of the 372 gram XCD 55mm autofocus lens from Hasselblad, and it's more than twice the weight of the 288 gram Voigtlander f2.0 Apo Lanthar lens. Mind you, neither of those lenses get even close to the 0.95 maximum aperture on this lens, but its weight is something to keep in mind. So if you lust after the Hasselblad XCD 55mm lens, or you're contemplating the XCD 45P, but you're struggling with stock availability and you want an ultra-fast, bokeh-licious 50mm lens with high build quality and a dual personality, then this lens is surprisingly good. To see more of my experience with the X2D and other lenses that I've tried with this camera, just have a look at the videos either side of my fat head. Thanks for watching. See you next time.